All right, now that we have grading on our pattern, let's talk about adding and grading internal lines. Okay, so we use the internal lines to compare back to our spec pages. Let's go ahead and add in our lines and then we will talk about grading them. Okay, so I'm going to turn grade off, Control H. I'll go ahead and turn my grade rules off for now. So I'm going to create my lines. So the first one I'm going to create is my body length. So I'm in create 2-point. Make sure snap to geometry is on. Make sure you click and drag and release once you hit that yellow box. I'm going to hold shift to keep my line straight. I'm going to click and hold until that bottom line is black. That means I'm snapping to that line, and I'm going to release. Okay. I'm going to do this on my shoulder width. Shoulder width I typically measure on the back only. I'm going to do my front and back neck drops and my high point shoulder lines, which on the back will also become my neck width. Okay. Now with these lines, because I didn't know like where to snap them to, I can go to modify, clip. With clip, you always select the part of the line you want to keep, and then you select the line that's intersecting at which you want to clip. Okay. So the side you want to keep clipped with the neck width. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go and do my bust. So with the bust, you're in 2-point line. You can bunny click on the side seam, and in the direction coming from the armhole, you're going to type in 1. Okay. Hold shift, click and hold the center front, release. Bunny click, 1, shift, click and hold. Okay. The sweep will just use the bottoms. What am I missing? Across front, across back. So for those, I know I'm 5 inches from high point shoulder, so I'm going to go to create offset. I'm going to make sure I'm in add. Okay. And I'm going to click my high point shoulder lines. I can do them together. Okay. I'm going to bunny click and I'm going to type in -5. All right. And then I want to extend these out. So I'm going to go to modify, extend, and I'm going to click on the line and it will automatically, you just click and right click OK, and it's just going to snap it to the armhole. All right. Okay. And then I think that's it. Let's do our sleeve. So I'm going to do a line from my notch straight down to my bottom hem. I'm going to do a bicep, which is 1 inch from the armhole, just like my bust on the body, 1 inch. Okay, so I have all my measure lines. Now let's turn the grade on. Okay, so now I need to grade all of these lines. So in some cases, it's a simple rule number, right? So any case where our internal line meets exactly at an already graded point, okay, we can turn our grade rules on to see, we can just add that rule number. So you can do one of two things. You can copy from one line to the other, or you can enter a rule number. Now, keep in mind, when you grade one end of the internal line, the other side of the line is going to try to grade to maintain its current length. So you'll end up having to grade both lines, both endpoints. Okay, so I'm going to slide into this high point shoulder line. I'm going to enter a 3. Okay, so now you see that line intersects my high point shoulder, which is great. However, you see down here, it almost looks correct, but if you really look at it, my aqua line is intersecting with my yellow line, and my yellow line is intersecting with my aqua line. So I'm a little backwards there. So to fix that, I'm going to use, there's no rule number I can use because I want the X movement of this 8 and 7 rule, right? But I want the Y rule to match this 3 rule, right? So my line stays parallel. So I could do a series of copy X and Y's, but the easiest thing to do here, because I don't need a grade point on my actual perimeter here, is to do intersection X. Click and slide into that end line, and you'll see. So now my line stayed parallel, but it's now intersecting with the correct size. And if you actually go into Edit Delta and look at this grade, it's going to have the X movement of the 7 and the 8 point, the 3/8, 3/8, and the Y movement is matching the Y movement of my 3. Okay. Okay. So that intersects. Let's also do, so this high point shoulder is also intersecting at that 3 point. So I'm going to add a 3 there. And my front neck drop is intersecting at the 2. Okay. So I'm just adding those rule numbers there. And now I'm going to have to fix this situation. For my bust line, even though my bust line is an inch below the 6th, I know that my 6 and 7 have the same Y rule. So I'm actually just going to use the 6 for my bust line as well. Okay, I can do this on my back as well. I could be doing both of them at the same time. My shoulder width line is intersecting at that 4 point. My high point shoulder line is intersecting at that 3 point. And my back neck drop is intersecting at my 9 point. Okay, this gets a little hard to see. Okay, so now with my bust line, you see that my lines are passing my center front, center back. So I could do an intersection Y. I could do Edit Delta, clear Y. Okay, or I could apply my rule number 1. My rule number 1 has 0x and 0y movement. Okay, this only works if you don't want movement in either the x or the y direction. Okay, so that is the case for this bust line. However, for the shoulder width, so I want the y to be 0, but I want the x grade to still match the 4. Okay, so the 1 rule won't work there. So instead, what I need to do is either an intersection y or an Edit Delta, clear Y rule, and say okay. All right. Okay, now I want to do the same thing for my high point shoulder lines. So my high point shoulder lines, I want the Y direction to be 0, right? So it intersects with center front, center back. Same thing here. I want the Y to be 0, clear Y. Okay. Now for this high point shoulder line, I want the X rule to intersect with this high point shoulder line. So I really want the X rule of this particular line. So I'm going to take the X rule, I'm going to do copy X rule from this 3 point, okay? And then I'm going to right click OK, and then I'm going to, oops, that did not work. Copy X rule from my 3 to the end of my front neck drop point and say okay. All right. So all I took was I kept the Y rule of what was already there, but I just copied the X rule from the 3 so that it would intersect. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to copy X from here and I'm going to paste it right there. Okay. So now if I measure my back neck drop, I should have no grade. That's what I asked for. And when I grade my front neck drop, I should get my 1/8 inch grade. Okay. So really what we're doing is a series of saying, okay, I know with these intersection points, I want the Y rule of this, right? So that it stops at center back. And I want the X rule of my high point shoulder. Okay. So that way we're kind of combining both of these rules to this particular point right here, but we have to put that on both this end point and this end point. Okay. All right. Lastly, I need to do my across front, across back. So I have no grade point here at my across front, across back line. So the first thing I need to do is add a grade point. So the way we do this is we choose grade point add. Okay. And I'm going to right click intersection because I want to add a grade point where this line intersects my perimeter. So I'm going to choose my intersection, my line that intersects the perimeter first. Then I'm going to click on the perimeter in which it intersects. Okay, so it goes ahead and it gives me a rule, but it just accepts whatever movement is already there. Okay, so I'm not dictating a rule number. It's creating its own rule number with a pound sign. This means that that rule number is not in my rule table. But now I have a space where I can actually put that 5 rule. So I think I added it down here on my notch before. But now what I can do is I can add it to both my point and both my line and my perimeter. Okay, so then it actually does change the shape of the armhole. But if I have a grade rule specific to that location, I want to change that shape because I've already determined that I want a specific grade movement there. Okay, so once again, I'll show you on the front side. So to add a grade point at a place where we don't currently have one, we do grade point add, right click intersection, click the line, click the perimeter. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and add the rule number 5 and add the rule number 5. Okay, so the reason we could do an intersection Y, right? We did that over here with the bottom hem. The reason I didn't do that is that I want a grade rule on my perimeter at that specific point, right? I actually want my armhole to grade. I don't just want the line to hit the armhole at whatever point is already there. I want to dictate how that movement is. And I may want to change it. So having a grade rule at these specific fit critical points can be really important when you're actually editing rules, okay? So now I have to fix the endpoints here. So again, I can do edit delta clear Y. And this time I'm going to do rule number 1. So you see I switch out which method I use. I'm doing that mostly so you get to see all the methods used. You can choose whichever one is the most intuitive for you. Okay. So now when I start measuring these lines, right? So if I do my bust, my front and back bust together, I should get half of my bust grade, which was 1.5 inches to 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. So I have 3/4, 1, 3/4, 3/4. Okay, so that is correct. If I take these sizes and multiply them by 2, I get this grade. Okay, so this is what I mean by you should be checking your graded line lengths against your graded spec. So for my cross front, I have 3/8 per size. And the grade I entered here was 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, 3/4. So this is half of my across front. So double these measurements and you get the correct grade. Okay. So I would go point of measure by point of measure and check that these all look correct. Okay.